Actually, Kalera, you unmute your mic. Your mic is mute.
Okay, fonts da Mumbai, what was it? Fonts da Mumbai, Mfazo Kwama Kankara. Uh,
Kankarang.
this is our very third lesson since we started this very Tyap Wiki Bootcamp. And today we are going to go straight again as we did last in our last encounter because the lessons are a bit long these last two lessons. And if you permit me, I'll just go ahead straight to share my screen and then we'll see what we have done in the last class, maybe, and we advance to the very new. So my screen is sharing. I hope you can also my screen. Okay. So this is the home page for our event. So once you click on the link that you had as an invitation, which I am also putting on the chat, you will be able to get to that very page that I am on right now. So this is where all our information, all the guidelines that we need to know for this very program are located. So from right here, you can be able to log into this very call, and then from this very table, you are seeing dates. Then you are going to see the slides we have been able to make for the last two lessons. So you can also watch this very event when you click on YouTube right now. So anyone can be able to watch it anywhere in the world right now. So all the recordings we have done thus far since on the first lesson till this very lesson, we have them all here. So and the same thing for all the slides. If you need a slide, register as a Wikimedian. If you don't know how to register as a Wikimedian, please contact any of our members who has recorded, who has registered. You can contact Ogwaka right there immediately after, and then he would guide you through. And once you have logged in and you can see your name up here, then that means you can be able to do anything that a Wikimedia can do. It's a simple process. So you can always download your documents right here. You see download. Once you click on it, then you choose which resolution you want, full resolution. This one low quality, followed by this, then this is high quality. So just click on this and it will be downloaded on your system or on your mobile phone. So let's get straight to our today's lesson. So today we are going to start a new topic, but before then I want to ask us, what topic did we speak about last week? Can anyone remind us about our lesson last week? What did we learn about last week? Just a brief summary, just one person, and then we move straight to this lesson.
We
Mm,
listed the
Last
alphabets and then we got
Okay,
vowel sound.
okay, so you go ahead. So she said something about alphabet, even though the audio is not so clear, but we treated um,
because you don't get
uh,
money, you make you
actually, whose mic is talking from the background? Okay, so we treated a topic that has to do with the basic, uh, uh, part of the alphabet, like the consonant sounds, the vowel sounds, and we just had just a brush of what we did. And it is good that we know that whatever we're doing right now is just to give us an idea about where we are going, and this is just a basic, this is just a fundamental um, what do you call it, course now. And I didn't bring it. I was thinking I was going to bring it, but we have the book ready, uh, just a sample version of it for this very course. So those who are going to be coming in person, they are going to get that very book to use for their own, learning of the language. But I'll open to the very book so that you can see how it looks. It looks very good. Um, mm, so let me just open to, you can see the book right here. It looks very nice, isn't it? So you can see this is our book, and we can be able to uh, use it even after this very course to teach other people how to read and write in the language. So just we just hope that all of us who are present here will be present in person in August. So this very a guide to learn to read and write has reached the very third lesson since we started, and today we're going to talk about phonology. All these words they look like grammar, or they look like very big words, but when you actually look at them, they don't mean anything. They are just very simple. And today we'll understand what phonology is and what type of phonology we have in Tiap that is different from English. And from what we have here, it says that phonology is a study of sound patterns in a language. There are some words in a language that have a consonant first, then followed by a verb, followed by a consonant, followed by a verb. Some have consonants, some have consonants, and then verb. But some other ones don't have such. Like Tiap, for example, if we have a word like bat, you see that this is a consonant sound, and then this is a vowel sound, and this is a consonant sound. But hardly will you ever see consonant followed by another consonant followed by a vowel sound. But in some other languages like Arabic, for example, or like Hausa, maybe you can be able to find such. So phonology is the study of language patterns in a language and the way the basic units of the sounds or the phonemes are arranged. I will need some of us to unmute our mics. Maybe you just raise your hand, and then you tell me amongst these very 1 to 9, which amongst them do you think is likely to be a Tiap word, and which of them you think is unlikely to be a Tiap word. So, can someone unmute or someone raise their hands, and then pinpoint to us which amongst these from number 1 to number 9, which amongst them do you think, and then you give us the reason why you think it is a Tiap word, or why you think it is unlikely to be a Tiap word. Anyone at all? Or do we really understand the question?
I to me, I think that number one is Kiabut, but
Okay, but what about this number 2?
number two is not Kiabut.
Oh, why do you think it cannot be a Tiap word?
So, just as you rightly said, that we can have two consonant in Tiab, we don't have two consonant sound at the same place.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So we cannot have a word like debat, for example, or something like upta, for example, or upto, or
That
up to.
I doubt. I doubt.
Okay, so thank you very much, Tony Ben. So, like, if you look at number 1, always when we have a Tiap word, after a consonant, you have a vowel sound before any other thing. Sometimes you can have a vowel sound following another vowel sound to show that that very vowel sound is a long monotone sound, or it is a diphthong. But you can't just have a consonant sound followed by another consonant like this happening in Tiap. you hardly see anything like this, if not totally zero. But this number six, this one is a Tyap word. Tap, of course, we can add A and then T to become tabat, but we have to put an underscore right here to become tabat. And then this one is a Tyap word, ta. And then this one, well, it is not complete yet, but if we leave it like this, it cannot be a Tyap word because our words do not end like this. Even though our words, of course, they end with letter T, yes, but we cannot have a word like at. It doesn't sound like Tyap. So every language have their own features. Like for Arabic, this is very common. This ABT is very common. This TBA is very common. In fact, you can have KTB. They are very common. And the rest of the Chadic or the rest of the Afro-Asiatic languages where the Hausa language belongs to. But even Hausa itself, because of the influence of the Afro-Asiatic, I mean, of the influence of the Niger Congo languages, for example, Tiao, it has also transformed to one kind of level to the point that if they will borrow a word from Arabic, even though they belong to the same language group, they'll have to modernize it again, modify it again to look like somehow close to like our own. For example, a word like, let's say, Bahar, for example. Bahar means sea or an ocean in Arabic language. But when they import it to the Hausa language, they can add an I to it and then it will become Bahari or Buhari. That's still the same kind of name, if I'm not mistaken. So they always have a consonant sound followed by a vowel sound at the end of their words. Always. So, can you identify some patterns never found in the Tiap language, TB, which actually Ben has already been pointed? So, we can actually understand that TB does not occur in the Tiap language, or BT doesn't occur because our language is not like that. And then, have you ever noticed that the sounds cha, fa, ja, L, S, V, W, Y, and Z, they never occur at the end of their words. They never occur at the end next to a consonant except W and Y. In fact, this one is even talking about the end. But after a consonant sound, we usually have BY, we have BW, we have PY, we have PW, we have KY, we have KW, but we don't have it at the end of a particular word or any word at all in the Tiap language. Now, let's try to call this very word. Apart from you, actually, Ben, can someone else, I'm not Gwazayet now, can someone else unmute and call these words or these names Bulus, Pius, Emmanuel, and Esther in a Tiap way? Call it the way your great grandmother would have called it if she was with us right now. So, can someone unmute and call these names in the Tiap way?
Okay, can I respond?
Okay, okay, fine.
So I think my grandfather will say blue.
Okay, Bullet.
Yes. And the second
Okay,
one he
this
will
one.
say Payot.
Payot.
Yeah.
And then this
Then
one.
the third one he will say Maniet.
Maniet.
Uh,
Okay, and then this one.
this one is Esita.
Etc.
Uh,
Okay, so okay. So you can see that whenever we have borrowed words in our language, because our words don't end with letter S, we have to change this one to D sound or T sound. So we have borrowed instead. This one is also ending with S, so we have Payot. And then this one is ending with L, so we have Imaniet, so that we can finish, we can kill off this L at the end. Even though some people will say Maniet, but in the Bible, in the New Testament, it is Imaniet, even though we know that most Tiap words don't start with I, but then I don't really know. That one is Imaniet or Maniet, and then this one is Eseta. Eseta, because we have S here and then we have T. So, and in Tiap, if we have S and T, most times this S is usually removed. For example, Stephanus or Estefanus, that very name, when it enters into the Tiap language, this S is usually removed and then it will now become Itifanut. It ends with an S, yes, but then the S is removed and then the S is removed and replaced with the letter T. So that's the way the language is. And then this R, a typical Tiap name doesn't end with letter R, or a typical Tiap word doesn't end with letter R, but then we discover a very few of them that have that R. Probably they were borrowed and never really adjusted. For example, the word Zater is a name of a bird. It usually cries like that. Zater, zater. That's the way the Atia people hear the sound, and then they call it the name Zater. And then we also have another word, Didir. That's straight. So I don't know why it is Didir and not Didirk. Even though some people say Didirk, and then some other people say Didir with an R at the end. So I want to believe that it is actually Didirk, but then some choose to shorten it and then make it Didir for straight. And then these words have been rendered as naturally as possible in Tiap, and that's why they are giving us Bulut, Bayot, Imaniet, and etc. Now, how would you write these names? That's a question. Can you all write for us in the chat how these names can be spelled according to your own understanding in the chat right there? So write it right here how you think the name Bolus in Tiam should be written. First of all, Bolus before we move to the other name. So can anyone endeavor to write how Bulut will be written in Tiap? So no efforts. Okay. So Gwazayed has written Bulut with a D at the end. Maybe the first three, and then we'll move to the next name. Okay. So we have Atoliben said Bulut also, and then Yangali Kali says Bulut with a T. So we have the first three already. So in the Tia Bible and in written materials of the language, words that are ending with the D sound, the D sound, they are usually written with a T instead of with a D, because in the Tiab language, we'll be having the issue of whether the words should be spelled with a D or with a T, or whether the words should be spelled with a B or with a P, or whether the words should be spelled with a K, with a G, or with a K. So you discover that when we have a word like bulut that was supposed to write with a D, you will write it with a T, but when you are pronouncing it, you pronounce it as a D. When we have a word like bat, for example, bat is supposed to be written like this, yes, but they choose to write it like this, bat. And then when we have a word like bab, for example, or bab, they choose to write it like this, parallel. So all the words in Tiap that are supposed to end with letter T, I mean letter D, they end with letter T. All of them that are supposed to end with letter B, they end with letter P, and all of them that are supposed to end with letter G, they end with letter K. So we have a word like gag, for example, that is boundary, that is being spelled with a K. So always take note of this very adjustment and don't get confused. They are very simple. Just rewire your mind that I'll write it like this, but this is how I'll pronounce it. Even though there's also another thing that is called the what do you call it? Is it concordance or something? That is when you have a but, for example, or when we let me take a very simple example. That's a very common problem we're having currently. The word tiap, the word tiap. Some people want it to be spelled like this. They want it to be spelled tiap with a B, but the Bible translators choose to use a P. And the argument is that when you call it tiap, it sounds P in the ears. But then when you have to add a next word to it that starts with a consonant sound, with a vowel sound rather, then it will now sound like a B. So it is like, why not just spell it with a B so that you just assume that it is a P sound? So you know that whenever we have a gathering, we usually have what we call agreement. It's a democracy most times. So the ones that want it to be like this, and if they are more in number, those people will win it, whether they are correct or not. And the ones that want it to be like this, whether they are correct or not, they will win it. That's why we have bad leaders in government. And then you see that because the majority have voted them, or maybe they cheated in the election, they are usually the president or the governor. And then we also have the good ones who are supposed to be the president, but they are not in government. But in this very case, the argument on this one is a bit simple. It is that argument that says that we should just assume that it is a P sound whenever we hear something like pap, for example, just assume it is P. And then when you combine it, we're going to get there anyway, but this one is just by the way. So I don't know if I'm the one who opened this one, but I believe that we can still see my screen right now. So in Tiap, the letter M or the sound M never comes immediately before any of these very ones. That's D or F or G or H or T or K or N or T or V. Whereas N does. For example, when you have letter M, the next word that is supposed to come is supposed to be a word like D, or a word like, I mean, sorry, when you have letter N, the next word you are supposed to have is a word like letter D, letter F, letter G, letter H, letter K, letter N, letter T, letter V. But when you have letter M, you are supposed to have something like this. So in English, we have what they call the plosives, and those plosives are usually the ones that are pronounced with a banging sound, like B, for example, or B, for example, or P, or B. Uh, I don't know, and somehow they are written in similar fashion. When you tumble this one upside down, it will become P, and then you leave it like this, it is B. And then when you add a G to this B, it is still a plosive. And then when you write a K and then write a P, it is P. In Tia, we have about four of those plosive sounds. So whenever you are using a plosive sound, or you are writing a plosive, uh, a letter that is starting with uh, an M, or no, rather, I don't know how to explain it, but I don't think we are understanding it anyway. So if you are writing a word and it's supposed to start with either an M or an N, the next, uh, I think I've confused all of us. So I don't know. Are we all understanding what I'm saying at all? Because I've muddled it up. Okay, let's start from beginning again. When you have letter M, the next word that is supposed to follow it, or the next consonant sound that is supposed to follow it, is supposed to be plosive. But when you have a letter N, the next word that is supposed to follow it is not a plosive. A plosive is letter K, I mean a plosive is letter G, or letter B, or letter KP, or the sound KP, or the sound GP. There are four of them in here. ba, ba, pa, ba, and then itself again. That's letter M itself. But when you have any other entirely, any other consonant sound, it's supposed to be started with letter N. So some people, when they are writing in the Tyap language, and they are writing the name or the word man, for example, you see some people will write it like this, man. And from what we have there in our slides, it says that you cannot have a letter N before a letter M or before a letter B or before this bar sound or before this bar sound or before this bar sound. When we have mban, for example, we can't write it like this, mban, because it is a plosive. B is a plosive sound. So it always has to be mm, mm before ban. Then when we have this next plosive sound, mban, mban has to be mm, not because this whole arrangement is a plosive sound. Ba. So we have it like this. And then when we have something like this, pan, mm, pan, if we have anything like that in here, not like this, not like this, but like this because this is a plosive sound. And then the last one is pan, pan. We may not have a word like this, but we have a word like this, p, p. We can't write NP like this, NPI. It can't be NPI because the next consonant sound is a plosive. But then when we have any other one, like so for like nchung, for example, we can't write nchung like this, nchung. This is not here again. When we have F, for example, we can't write it like this, mfung. It has to be mfung. And then when we have home, for example, or maybe in here, we can't write in here with an M. We have to write it with a H. When we have L, we can't have N. We have to have N. But then in Tiap is very funny. You can't have an N followed by an L. You have to change that L to D. We'll get there anyway, it's part of our lesson, but letter L is the one that is so funny like that. You can't just have N followed by L, except in this borrowed word that we have in Tiap, because it's a borrowed word, number, which is numbers, singular number, and then plural number. I don't know why it is not number, because if we are actually to follow uh, um, the Tiap arrangement is supposed to be in Damba, but somehow it is in Lamba, and I don't really know why. So you can sample with all the consonant sounds, all of them from cha down to z. It's supposed to be z, not z. Otherwise, it won't be Tiap anymore. But we have a few exceptions because the people who were doing the translation or who were writing the spellings of these very words, they chose to write it like this, even though it's not supposed to be like this. For example, if you open to the Bible, you see this word bang bang, bang bang, bang bang. Well, probably because the sound is like that, bang, and then bang is two words. It's actually the bang that is doubled to form this very word. This very word. And then another word is bang bang. Even though this one's supposed to be an M, not an N, because this is a plosive sound. We read bang bang with an N, bang bang, bang bang, and one other one. Well, there are very few, but any other ones, any other like mba, mbap, which is the leaves of a cocoyam plant, mba, that is them, or maybe Mba, the name of a boy, and then a kambut, or kambut, that is purple, and then Ngbum, that's all. A lot of us are fond of writing Ngbum with an N here, letter N, which is wrong. Always remember, whenever you have a plosive, it is no more an N anymore, it becomes an M. Then even the plural form of vuak, vuak, not vuak, it doesn't start with an N but M. Then we have pumpan with an M, not N. And then man, children. Pumpan is close, and then man is children. We don't start it with letter N, it's with letter M, because this is an M word. Man is the word that is coming after the so we don't have an N here. And then we have word, which is a pause or so, and then we are not having an N here, we are having M. Okay. And then interestingly, English language also exhibits something similar. If we look at the word tendency, we don't have an M here. It's N, not M, because this one is not a plosive sound. When we look at long, this one is well, these two, they are together, so I don't know, maybe this example is odd here, but long, the N and the N and the G, they are forming the same sound, na sound. And then bent, we're having N here, not M, not bent, but bent. Maybe in another language it could be like that, but in this very language it's not like that. It follows the Tyap pattern. And then the same thing in first, the same thing with rank, and then other words. And then when you look at this one's important, because this is a plosive sound, but we're having an M. Because this is a plosive sound, umbrella, it is preceded by an M. Because member, B is a plosive sound, we're having M, not N. Because B is a plosive sound, we're having ambassador, not an ambassador, am. Because M is well, it is M itself, so we're having an M. That's why we're having man in Tiab, not man. And then the same thing with dummy, and then the same thing with a host of many other words in the English language. If you look at the Hausa language, it's something similar as well. Then we have another thing called articulation effect. What sounds do you hear at the end of these Tiap words when pronounced alone? Now, I want somebody who has not spoken before now to unmute and then pronounce these words also, as the others have done. Can someone unmute and pronounce these words as they are?
Can I try?
Yes, yes, sir.
Tak,
Okay,
chop,
tak, talk,
bat,
but,
bat. I don't know this one though. Tip.
okay. So this is L, L-A-T.
No, this one is lat.
Okay, lat, and then this one.
Tip.
Okay, so last week we treated, okay, you were not present. So last week we treated the consonant sounds. Whenever we have an I sound in Tiap, it is E, but when we have an underscore, you know that that sound would have to change. So this is So I pronounce this one again.
Can I try?
Yes.
Help me, oh, I don't know it.
Okay, so this is this sound is okay, pronounce T P.
Tip.
Okay, so the sound will have to change from E to U. So this one is tup, 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 tup. No more tip. It's now tup. Okay, pronounce it.
Tip,
Okay, tup. That's to
tip,
think. Okay, tup is what is even tup? Okay, that's to plant something.
plant, plant
Okay,
something.
so the tip is to plant, and the continuous tense is tree. And then what is this last one?
It's looking difficult though.
Okay, so we treated this one last week. Ny.
Nyap.
So you pronounce, but you know how to pronounce nyanya.
Nyap. That's nyap.
So this is nyap, to press something. Nyap. So you discover that this one is kind of sounding like a K, but then if this one is also sounding like a K at the end, tiok. This one sounded like a T at the end. Well, this one sounded like a D or like a T at the end. This one sounded like a P or like a B at the end. This one also sounded like a P or B at the end. Well, it sounds like a B to some, it sounds like a P to some, but in written form, we have it written P instead of B. The same thing here, P instead of B. So some people you see that they will write TI underscore B. It doesn't mean that they are wrong, but then in written here, the agreement is that we should write it with a PND. So some will write LAD. It doesn't mean they are wrong, they are not wrong, but the agreement is that we should always write such words with letter T instead of with letter D. The same thing with this one. Some people will write BAD. It doesn't mean they are wrong, they are right, but then the agreement is that we should write it with a T, but you can pronounce it like a D. So this is just what the basic things that we should actually take note of whenever we are reading Tyap words. Then the second point is now listen again carefully to the last sounds of the same words. Place the word starting with a vowel, e.g., ayin, etc. So can someone try to put ayin after any of these words for us? You can still try, or someone else can try. You can have this one and ayin, and then you can have tiok and ayin, and then you can have bat and ayin, and then you can have lat and ayin, tip and ayin, and then yap and ayin. Can someone try that for us?
Can I?
Okay, try it.
We have tak ayin.
Tagayin.
Yes, sir.
Is it tak ayin or tagayin?
Tak ayin.
Okay, just don't put a gap. Just make it be like it's in one word.
Okay, tak ayin.
Okay, tagayin, so you can hear the G sound very well. Then what about this one?
Which one?
This very one,
Togayin.
tiogayin.
It's togayin. Togayin.
Okay, then what about this one?
Bat ayin.
No, pronounce it like one word.
Bat ayin.
Badayin. So this one is now purely D sound, no T inside. Then what about this one?
Ladayin.
Ladayin. So the D sound is out, very clean. And then what about this one?
Tubayin.
Tibayin. So the B sound here is out, completely out. And then what about this one?
Nyabayin.
Nyabayin. So this one is beginning to turn to B sound whenever we have a consonant, a vowel sound starting the next word. But then place a word starting with a consonant, ngu, for example. So try to combine these two together. Tak and ngu. Now pronounce them as one word. Can you try again actually, or can someone try this one? Tak and then ngu.
Tangu.
Tango.
Tangu.
Okay,
Tangu.
tango. Okay, then what about this one?
Chungu.
Chongu. And then what about this one?
Batingu.
Badngu. And then what about this one?
Langu.
Langu. And what about this one?
Tungu,
Tumbu. And then what about this one?
Nyamgu,
Nyambu.
Nyamgu.
So what did you discover when you were pronouncing these words? What did you discover from pronouncing this one, this tak and yin, and then this tak and mbu? What sound did you discover changing, or what sound did you discover disappearing from inside, or maybe remaining the same thing? Or can someone else help him out? Anyone?
For this, hello, can I say?
Okay, yes, one go for.
Yes, the Takayin, I think the
Okay,
A disappear.
the A.
The A after the yin, the YIN
Okay, so you mean it sounded like takin?
sounded like Tak Ke Yin.
No, not takayin. Tagayin. So what happened here is that when you are having a vowel sound here, like a yin, and then you have such a word with this one, it sounds like a G. When you pronounce it like this, probably to some ears, they sound or they hear it like tak with a G, some hear it like tak with a K. But it doesn't matter what anybody hears. But by the time you combine this one and a word that is starting with a vowel sound, then you would find out that a K would now begin to sound like a G. Tagayin, tag, not tak, tag now. And then this one is now sounding like a T, like a G also. Tiogayin, not tiokayin anymore. And then this one is also changing from a T now to a pure D sound. Badayin, badayin. And then this one is also changing from T to D, pure D sound. Ladayin or ladayin. And then this one is changing from P now to B, bayin, bayin. And then this one is now sounding like a B also, nyabayin or nyabayin. So that's what happens when you have a vowel sound next to any of these ones. And then when you have a word like ngu, well, me sometimes I hear that this one disappears somehow, or to some people it actually remains K. Some people they hear tak ngu, but for me I hear tangu, and then tiongu or tiok ngu if you choose to break it into pieces. But if somebody is speaking very fast, it's like this K is disappearing, tiongu, and then bangu. Well, this one sounds like a D still. Well, but some people they hear that it is a T that is still there, bat ngu. And then this one is langu. It sounds like a D to me before the ngu. And then this one is tip ngu or tungu. Sometimes it's like this P has even disappeared. Tungu and changed to B actually. And then this one is nyap ngu or nyamgu. It's just like this one has now become like an M self. But this is actually what they call the articulation effect. Whenever you have a word ending with a particular alphabet, and then when you have another word starting with a particular alphabet, there's usually a change in the sound in between them. That's what is called articulation effect. Okay, and then we'll have some set of words also. The very first one here, I don't know, can someone else also pronounce these ones for us? Can someone unmute and then pronounce these words for us?
Akpat,
Okay.
Nzit,
Nzit,
Elak,
alak,
Ayangfak,
ayamfak.
Afip,
Okay. And then this
Asyap,
one, okay,
Asyap.
siap. Okay. So we have akbat, we have nzit, Remember, in Tyap language, this Z sound can sound like DZ. So in this very situation, even it is a DZ sound. So this is NZ, DZ, NZ. But somehow, well, we write it with just letter Z. And then we have a lack here, a lack. This one is a name of a person, a lack. And then this one is a young fuck. A young fuck, just like an appetizer or a dessert. That's a young fuck. Nzit is us, and then Opat is Hausa, the Hausa people, and then Ofo is an adversary or is a co-wife, like when we have or polygamous homes, the other wife is Ofo, and then we also have a Sayab. So some people will pronounce this one as Sayap. Some people will pronounce it as a Siyap. Some people will pronounce it as a Sayap. It doesn't mean any of them is wrong. They are pronouncing according to their own regional pronunciations. But the standard way we write this one is EA instead of IYA. So let me write it again practically. So some people will write it like this. Let me open to a place like a Tyap Wikipedia, for example. So some people will write it like this, C, yap. But don't write it like this, but they'll pronounce it like this. And then some will remove this one and then put an as a yap. But then the standard pronunciation and spelling is a sayap, EA. But all of them are right. But this is our written standard. So by the time you add a woo next to any of them, listen and then you hear the change in sound. So can someone or even you, Gwazaye, can you put woo at the front of any of these ones and then you hear what difference it makes?
Okpadu,
Opadu,
Nzudu,
Nzodu,
Lagu,
Alagu,
Yangfagu,
Ayamfogu,
Fugu,
Ofobu,
Osiabu.
Asiabu. So what did you discover in the pronunciation of all of them, especially for this one? What articulation effect did you hear here between T and W?
Wow.
What changed? Like which letter is not supposed to be like that, but it now changed to another sound?
The T changed to D sound, Aquadu.
O- Okay, so the T changed to the D sound is very clear. You can't even make it like a patu. It doesn't sound like tap anymore if you say a patu, but it changes to a D sound. The same thing happens here. It becomes nzudu or nzudu. This T becomes a D sound, a clear D sound. The same thing here, it becomes a clear G sound. That's why we have the name Alagali. If you look at this one, some people's name, that's their name, Alag Ali. It is spelled like this, yes, but this is how we pronounce it, Alagali, even though we write it like this. Okay? So that's what they call the articulation effect. And then the same thing happens to Alag. The same thing happens to Ayamfogu. The same thing happens to Afobu. And then the same thing happens to Asayabu. But then we have an opposite or another kind of adjustment entirely in Tiab language. Note that the N has at the beginning of certain words, or we have letter N at the very beginning of some certain words, which is letter L, letter W, letter Y, but then something changes. For example, the one that I highlighted earlier on, when we have lamba, for example, or when we have the word lien, for example, if you have lien, ordinarily by common sense, just normal common sense, we're supposed to have lien, isn't it? But somehow in the Tiao language, when you have an L here, because we have Kiang now, which is thing, so to make it pronoun now, plural now, you just put n, and then become and then we have another word like uh, like for example, which is mind or neck, which is ridges. It has other meanings also. Lien can mean anger, lien can mean rage, lien can mean to know something. It can even mean knowledge itself. So you can see that L here changes to ND when we are pluralizing lien. And then we have second example, li to see. But if you want to say I see, instead of you just saying nli, in a dialect like Fantuan, for example, it is only I see. But in this very Mabododo that we are using, it is ndi because there's an n, whether there's a space here or there's no space. So long as there's anything like before that la, it must change to a d sound, except in that lamba, which is the plural form for numbers. So we have L here changing to a D. D. So by the way, D is ongwegu, as if for ngwe, that's skinning now, continuous form of way itself. So you have letter W being added a G after an N. So just try to understand it, just try to chew it, even if I'm not explaining it sufficiently. So NG is added whenever we have a word starting with W. And then the next one is one to cook something. The same situation we have here. Even though this very one, just like Ndi, there's a space here because whenever we have the first person personal pronoun, we usually space it before the next word, even though some people join it, but it is wrong. If they want to say Ngwai, they will make it like this without an underscore. This one is wrong. But always space it if it is I that you refer to with this N to become Ngwan. It will not become Ngwan anymore. It will be Ngwan because you have to introduce a G after or before a W and after an N. So G is added here. In this very situation, we have two words. In this very situation, we have the same word. In this very situation, we have two words. And then in this very situation, we have the same word. So if it is the same word, it's ND. If it is two words, it is D that's added to the next one that's replacing the L there. And then if it is the same word, it is NG. If it is two words, then that W would carry an extra G. Ngwan instead of
Why did you lock my phone?
Sorry, the network locked me out earlier on, so I don't know where I stopped exactly. Can you see my screen? Can you all see my screen?
I can't see your screen. Oh. I can't see your screen at all.
Yes,
No, sir, your
it's,
screen is not visible.
Okay, sorry. So
your screen
let
is
me
not coming.
do it again. What about now? Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Yes,
See
can
this
see
one.
it.
Okay. So let me check if the recording is still going on fine. Otherwise, we'll have to connect again to. Okay, so it is going on fine. So I don't know where exactly I stopped, where the network cut me off. But have I done learn again, or let me just start it again? So whenever we have an L, a singular word like learn, for example, and you want to say the plural form of it, you have to add a D. I mean, you have to change that L now to a D sound, and then before you add the N, so you have L being replaced by NT right here. You can see it, Lien to Ndien. Then we have Lia. Lia means well, that one is another one. That's a Lia now. That's year.
So the mail is falling because it's not able to come back. So just